when love crossed the line. They say falling for your best friend is complicated, but falling for your best friend's brother, that's a whole different kind of mess. I met Nathan when I was 13, skinny, loud, dramatic me, and chill, goofy, always there, Nathan. He was the boy who sat next to me on the bus when no one else would, the one who punched a guy in 8th grade for calling me weird, the one who held my hand during my parents' divorce without saying a word. Nathan wasn't just my best friend, he was my safe place. By the time we turned 25, we were practically soulmates, except without the kissing part. He knew my coffee order, my breakup patterns, my biggest fears, and the exact tone of voice I used when I was pretending to be okay. And I knew him, maybe even better than he knew himself. But then Liam came back, Nathan's older brother, the mysterious one, the one who moved out at 18 and barely looked back, the one Nathan only talked about in vague, almost bitter tones. Liam's complicated, that's all he'd ever say. So when Liam returned home for the first time in 7 years, I didn't expect much. I certainly didn't expect him to be so different. He was quieter than Nathan, sharper, not mean, just intense. The kind of man who looks at you like he's reading a book you forgot you wrote. The first time we spoke, he caught me in the kitchen, alone. I dropped a glass, it shattered, I cursed. He raised an eyebrow. Still as graceful as ever, huh? I blinked. Excuse me? He smirked. You don't remember me, do you? And that's when it hit me. He'd been there, at Nathan's 12th birthday party, the tall, aloof teenage brother who sat in the corner eating cake with headphones in. You were the ghost brother, I said. He laughed, a deep, rough sound that made my stomach flip. Glad to leave an impression. From that moment on, I noticed him more. Noticed the way he read in the mornings with his coffee, the way he only smiled when no one was looking, the way he looked at me like I was something he didn't quite understand, but wanted to. I tried to ignore it because this was Nathan's brother, Nathan, my best friend, the boy who had been my constant when everything else was falling apart. I owed him everything. But hearts don't follow logic. They follow glances held too long, accidental touches, late-night conversations that feel too intimate. One night, Nathan and I were watching a movie. Liam passed behind the couch, and our eyes met for just a second too long. I looked away. Nathan didn't notice, but I felt it. The shift, the danger, the line. And I realized I had already crossed it. The glance that changed everything. I told myself it meant nothing. That glance, that moment, that flicker of something between Liam and me. But once a spark catches fire, you can't unfeel the heat. The next morning, I came over to Nathan's like I always did, coffee in hand, sweatshirt oversized, shoes kicked off at the door. Home, that's what it had always felt like. But this time, Liam was there, in the kitchen, cooking. No shirt, just flannel pajama pants, hair messy, barefoot. And for a second, just a breath, I forgot how to breathe. Morning, he said, eyes flicking up. Hope you like your eggs runny. Nathan appeared right after, completely casual, tossing me a donut like usual. He had no idea I'd just watched his brother crack an egg with one hand and wreck my nervous system with the other. We ate breakfast like nothing had changed, joked, laughed, watched dumb videos, but something had changed. It was in the way Liam passed me a mug, his fingers brushing mine just a second longer than they had to, in the way his eyes found me even when he wasn't talking to me, in the way I felt more aware of him than I'd ever felt about anyone else. Later, I helped Nathan clean up. Glad you're okay with Liam crashing here, he said, drying a plate. He's not as terrible as I made him sound, huh? I forced a smile. He's surprising, Nathan laughed. Yeah, still full of mystery and brooding energy, but underneath it, he's not bad. Not bad? No, he was dangerous, not in the obvious way, but in the slow burn, unravel you with a glance kind of way. That week, I saw Liam more than ever. And with every moment, I told myself I was fine, that I wasn't falling, that this wasn't betrayal. But the truth is, falling never feels like falling until you realize you're already on the ground. One evening, I stayed later than usual. Nathan had gone out to grab drinks with some old college friends. I stayed to watch a movie, just me and Liam. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, far enough apart to be innocent, close enough for it to feel like anything but. The movie played, but I wasn't watching, because I could feel him, the way you feel a storm coming, still, silent, but electric. Then came the part of the movie I loved, the speech, the confession, the grand romantic truth. I said the words aloud before the actor could, just like I always did. Liam turned to me. You always do that. I smiled. Only when I care. He stared, not blinking, and not moving, So do you? I froze. The question wasn't about the movie, and we both knew it. I stood up too fast. I should go. He followed me to the door. The silence between us was loud. Then he said softly, like a secret he hadn't meant to say, "Nathan has no idea, does he?" I turned. There's nothing to know. But I didn't say it like I believed it, and he didn't look like he believed me either. "Claire," he began, and my name in his mouth sounded like a sin wrapped in a prayer. I shook my head. Don't. But I stayed. Just one more second. One more glance, and in that second, I felt the line blur even more. Crossing the line, we drew ourselves. Some lines are written in stone, others in sand. I thought I had drawn the boundary clearly. I told myself, he's Nathan's brother, he's off limits, he's not yours. But that's the thing about lines drawn in your head. They disappear when your heart starts whispering louder. After that night, I tried to avoid him, didn't stay late, didn't text Nathan when I knew Liam would be home. But Liam, he didn't avoid me. He'd show up when I least expected. At the bookstore. Didn't peg you for a thriller girl. At the coffee shop. Still ordering extra whipped cream? Some things never change. At my apartment with Nathan, but always with that same glance, like he was seeing something I didn't want anyone to notice. And me, I hated how I noticed everything. The way his jaw clenched when he was thinking, the scar near his eyebrow I hadn't seen before, the way he watched people, not to judge but to understand. I hated how I wanted to know what his hands felt like holding mine, what his voice would sound like saying my name in the dark. I hated how I didn't hate any of it. Then came the wedding, not ours, a mutual friend's. Nathan invited me as his +1. Liam would be there too, of course. Just like old times. Nathan said, slinging an arm around me. The three of us finally in the same place. If only he knew. The night of the wedding, I wore a navy dress. Simple, safe. Until I saw Liam. In a black suit, tie loose, eyes fixed on me like he'd seen that color on me before, even if he hadn't. "You look," he said, stopping mid-sentence. I raised an eyebrow. "What? Like you're about to break someone's heart." I laughed nervously. "Don't be dramatic." "Too late," he muttered. But I didn't ask what he meant because I already knew. At the reception, we danced, me and Nathan, like always. He twirled me. I laughed. It felt normal. But my eyes kept drifting, and Liam's never left me. Then came the moment I'll never forget. The venue had a garden out back, quiet, moonlit, empty. I stepped outside for air, and of course he followed. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, like, I just needed air. We stood in silence. Two people surrounded by everything they shouldn't feel. Then he said, "You know this can't keep going like this." My heart stopped. There's nothing going on. He stepped closer. Exactly, and that's the problem. Nothing has happened, but everything already has. And before I could say anything, he kissed me. Not soft, not hesitant, but like someone who had tried not to want something for too long. And failed. I pulled back, shaken, breathless, terrified. "We can't," he nodded. "I know." We stood there, hearts pounding, guilt already crawling into the spaces between us. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I can't keep pretending." I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to cry or kiss him again. And from the shadows of the door behind us, a figure moved. Nathan, frozen, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. He had seen everything, the broken truth between us. I'll never forget the look on Nathan's face. Not anger, not even betrayal at first, just disbelief. Like the person he trusted most had vanished right in front of him. "Nathan," I started. He stepped back, hands up, shaking his head. Just don't." Liam moved forward. It wasn't planned. Nathan's laugh was sharp, bitter. Well, thank God, because if that was planned, it would be even worse. I reached out, but he pulled away. "How long?" he asked. His voice didn't break, but mine did. "Nothing really happened, not until tonight. But it's been going on," he said. Not a question, a conclusion. "I felt it, Claire. I just didn't want to believe it. I thought you were my person." I tried to explain. But how do you explain something you never meant to let happen? Something that lived in glances and silences and skipped heartbeats. Liam spoke again. "It wasn't her fault. Shut up, Liam." Nathan's voice cracked for the first time. "You left for years. You didn't even write. Then you come back and take her." I stepped between them, tears is running freely. "Please, don't make this worse. I didn't mean to fall for him." "But you did." Those 3 words, they shattered me more than the kiss ever could. Nathan looked at me one last time. "You could have told me. You could have stopped this, but you didn't. And now I don't even know who you are anymore." Then he walked away. Liam didn't say anything for a long time. We stood in the garden where everything had fallen apart. Maybe I should go, he said. I looked at him, heart torn, shattered, and still drawn to him. Do you regret it? I asked. The kiss? He didn't answer right away. Then, no, but I hate what it cost. We drove home in silence, not together, just separately lost in the same storm. That night, I stared at the ceiling, replay after replay. Nathan's face, his voice, the sound of a friendship breaking. And underneath it all, the terrifying truth, I didn't want to undo the kiss. I just wanted to undo the pain. The next morning I called, I called after him. Nathan, voicemail again and again. Nothing. 3 days passed, then a week, no word. I started to understand something awful. Some people don't break up with lovers. They break up with friends. Liam knocked on my door on the 10th day. He looked tired, more broken than I'd ever seen him. You okay? I asked. He shook his head. I lost my brother. I swallowed. I lost my best friend. We stood there, two people holding the weight of what they'd done. He stepped closer. So what do we do now? I whispered. I don't know, but walking away from you feels like losing two people instead of one. We didn't kiss. We didn't touch. We just stood together, quiet, hurting, but not letting go. Where the pain meets the heart, no try team gap, no dow. Some loves come easy, ours didn't. It came with guilt, with silence, with the echoes of someone else's heartbreak ringing between every breath we shared. I hadn't spoken to Nathan in 2 weeks. His number still lived in my phone. His jacket still hung in my closet. His stupid inside jokes still echoed in the back of my mind when the world went quiet. Liam stayed. Not out of pressure, not out of duty, but because he chose to. Every morning he made coffee. Strong, too strong, exactly how Nathan hated it, but exactly how I needed it now. We didn't talk about Nathan at first. Too raw, too dangerous. But the silence between us wasn't peaceful. It pulsed, demanding honesty. One evening, we sat on my balcony, the same spot where I once cried over a failed job interview, a broken heel, a boy who ghosted me in college. Now I sat there, beside Liam, the boy who stayed, even after the worst of it. Do you think he'll ever forgive us? I asked. Liam didn't answer right away. Maybe not, but maybe that's not the point. Then what is? The point is, are we going to let his silence be louder than our truth? I looked at him, at the man I wasn't supposed to fall for, at the man who now knew every broken corner of my heart and didn't flinch. We didn't mean to hurt him, I whispered, but we did. Liam nodded. We also didn't mean to fall in love, but we did. There it was, said out loud, not a crush, not confusion, but love. And somehow that made it harder, because now it was real. We kissed again that night, not in the heat of guilt or secrecy, but in quiet acceptance of what we had, of what we lost, of what we were willing to fight for. Afterward, Liam held me. No words, just warmth and the slow, steady beat of his heart against mine. Days passed, then one night a message came. Nathan, I'm not ready to talk, but I needed you to know I'm trying. Don't reach out. I'll come to you when I can. I stared at the screen for a long time. Relief, grief, hope, all in one breath. I showed it to Liam. He didn't say anything. He just reached over, took my hand, and squeezed. We started to live in slowly after that. No grand gestures, just moments. Cooking together, reading in silence, walking around the block at dusk like an old couple in training. Love didn't feel loud with him. It felt safe, steady, like we had been torn down. And we're now learning how to rebuild, brick by honest brick. Some nights I still cried, grief isn't clean, and losing Nathan still burned. But Liam never tried to fix it, he just stayed. And sometimes that's enough. One night I asked him, do you ever wonder if we were a mistake? He looked at me, steady and sure. Mistakes don't feel like this. If love wasn't supposed to happen, why does it feel so right? They say the right love should come at the right time. But what if it comes when your world is a mess? What if it arrives when you're still carrying guilt, still holding on to the echo of another name? Liam and I didn't rush into anything. There was no let's be official talk, no public hand-holding, no anniversary date marked on calendars. But every morning he kissed my forehead before his coffee. And every night he held me like he was afraid the silence might steal me away. That was enough. One Sunday morning, we lay tangled in blankets, windows open, the world quiet. We've been hiding, I said softly. He nodded. I know. Do you think we're being cowards? No, he said without hesitation. I think we're being careful with something fragile. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the world. "I miss Nathan," I whispered. "So do I," he said, and I knew he meant it, because Liam hadn't just lost a brother. He'd lost the chance to fix what was broken between them. And I'd lost the only person who ever truly knew every version of me. But still, when Liam kissed my hand, when he tucked my hair behind my ear, when he made me laugh with those rare, unexpected jokes, I felt like I was finally home. One evening we went out, dinner. Just us, no hiding. People looked, not because they knew, but because we looked like something new wrapped in something heavy, like love with a bruise. We didn't talk about Nathan, not that night, we just lived. A bite of dessert shared, a glass of wine split between smiles, hands brushing on accident, and this time, not pulling away. Afterward, we walked through the park, a bench under a lamp, the same one Nathan and I had sat on years ago. Liam paused. "You've been here before." I nodded. "Yeah." He didn't ask with who, he already knew. "You okay?" I smiled, bittersweet. Sometimes I feel like I'm cheating on a memory. He took my hand. "Then let's make new ones we don't have to apologize for." That night we danced in my kitchen, no music, no reason. Just us, barefoot, swaying, laughing when he stepped on my toes. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel guilty for being happy. Later, lying in bed, he whispered, "You don't have to keep waiting for something to go wrong." I looked at him. What if I already feel like I don't deserve this? He smiled sadly. "Then I'll love you until you believe you do." And in that moment, I knew. Whatever storm we came from, this was our peace. And then, it was a Thursday, gray skies, half-finished coffee, a day like any other, until it wasn't. My phone buzzed. Unknown number, but I knew, before I answered, before I even breathed, I knew. "Hello? It's me." Nathan, his voice older somehow, colder, but still Nathan. I froze. Every word I rehearsed in the shower, in my head, in my journal, gone. "Hi," I whispered. Silence. Then, "Can we meet?" 30 minutes later, I was sitting across from him at a small cafe. The same one where we once laughed over spilled tea and life plans that never happened. Now we were strangers sharing a history too heavy for one table. Nathan didn't look angry. He looked tired, like someone who'd fought with himself more than with me. "You look well," I said. "Stupid, too casual." He smiled bitterly. "Do I? I don't feel it." There was silence again. Long, uncomfortable. Then finally, "I don't hate you." I looked up, eyes burning. "You don't?" He shook his head. "I did, for a while, for a lot of reasons." "Because I betrayed you?" "No, because you didn't trust me with the truth." Ouch, that one hit different, because he was right. I didn't know how, I admitted. It happened so slowly, and by the time I realized it, it already hurt too much to say out loud. Nathan nodded, looked out the window. "You loved me once, didn't you?" I swallowed. "I always did, just not in the way you needed me to." He exhaled. "And him?" I nodded. "Yes." "Do you still?" "More than ever." He closed his eyes for a second, then opened them. "I lost you, and I lost him. But I guess maybe you two found something real in the middle of all that mess." I didn't respond, because I didn't want to defend it. I just wanted him to know it wasn't for nothing. Nathan leaned forward. "I won't pretend it doesn't still hurt, but I'm not here to fix the past. I'm just trying to let it stop controlling me." I almost cried. But I held it in, because that moment, his words, were the kindest gift I didn't know I still needed. Before he left, he said, "Tell Liam, I hope he doesn't mess it up. He always was the reckless one, but maybe you make him steady." And with that, he was gone. Not entirely forgiven, not entirely okay, but not angry anymore. That night, I told Liam everything. He listened, and quiet, attentive, a small flicker of relief in his eyes. "So, does that mean we're not villains anymore?" He joked. I smiled. "No, it just means we're human, and maybe it's time to stop punishing ourselves for falling in love." He kissed me then, slow, certain. And I let myself believe for the first time in a long time. Maybe we didn't steal this love. Maybe it was ours all along, waiting for the right pain to break it free. Some love stories aren't perfect, but they're still worth it. We didn't get the movie ending. No fireworks, no slow motion run across the airport. What we got was quieter, realer, more broken, but more earned. 3 months after Nathan's call, he sent me a photo. Him, smiling with a new puppy, captioned, "Starting over. Sarah, slowly." And I cried, because I realized some goodbyes don't last forever. Some just need time to breathe. Liam moved in with me, not because we rushed, but because we were ready to stop running. He brought his books, his sketches, his awful taste in cereal. And every night, he brought his presents, steady, silent, mine. We still had hard days. Nathan's name still came up in conversations. There were moments when the guilt knocked on our door like a shadow too familiar to forget. But love stayed, and so did we. One morning, I found a note on the kitchen table. Liam's handwriting, crooked, messy, honest. I know we didn't start perfect. I know we hurt people, but if loving you was the only mistake I ever made, I'd still choose it every time. I folded the note and put it in my journal, right next to the photo of Nathan and me from our high school graduation. Because both mattered. Both were parts of me. One was my past, the other, my choice. A year later, Nathan showed up at our door. Unexpected, uncertain. Liam froze. I did too. But Nathan just smiled. Awkward, sincere. I was nearby. Thought I'd see if you had coffee, and if you don't, I brought some. We sat together, then together. 3 people, 1 table, years of history between us. We didn't fix everything, but we shared stories, laughed, even cried. And in that moment, I realized something. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It just stops it from poisoning the future. Later that night, Liam held me tighter than usual. Didn't say a word. He didn't have to, because this wasn't just love anymore. It was resilience, commitment, truth. I asked him, do you ever wish things had gone differently? He shook his head. Maybe easier, but not different, because every wrong turn led me here to you. And I knew deep down this wasn't the love story I dreamed of as a child, but it was the one that mattered. The one that survived storms, that grew in shadows, that broke and healed without needing to be perfect to be real. So no, we weren't perfect, but we were us. And that, after everything, was enough. The end.